What's up, YouTube? It's me, it's your boy D, and I am back here with, yes, you guessed it, another one. And tonight, I'm here to talk about another crew within the Twisted Toons universe. So sit back and get ready to talk about Team Bart. What do I always say? Without nothing being said, ain't nothing to it but to do it. So let's dive into it. What's up, YouTube? You boy D here, and I am back. Alright, so moving on along with my little in-depth look at the teams here within the Twisted Toons universe. I started off the first video with the main character, with the first team of the main character, Super Mario. So moving on along, we're going to talk about today in this video Mario's basically biggest ops and his squad. So I'm not even gonna waste nobody's time. I want to get right down into it. So without further ado, we're talking about none other than Team Bart Simpson. So let's go ahead and start off with the first member. All right, let's get it.
Bart Simpson.
All right, Bart Simpson. So, within the Twisted Toons universe, obviously Super Mario is our main character. Well, if there was a 1B to Super Mario's 1A on Twisted Toons, it would be Bart Simpson. You know, Bart Simpson on our series is Super Mario's most famous, biggest rival, his biggest ops, his number one arch nemesis. But he's got many of them, but Bart Simpson is the main one. As I said on another video, Super Mario is kind of like the Stone Cold Steve Austin of our franchise. So if Super Mario is the Stone Cold, then Bart Simpson is pretty much the Rock of our franchise. Those two guys pretty much go hand in hand, and either one of them could really be the face of the franchise. It's just that Mario is the first pretty much protagonist in the first drawing we ever had, which is why Mario is the main guy. Bart Simpson makes his first appearance in episode number 3, entitled New Crime Lord in Town. And basically, Bart Simpson's role on our series and on his own team is, like Mario, he is the leader. The difference between Bart and Mario is that though, Bart is a little more articulate with the way he does things. He's he's a lot more calculated, and he thinks out a lot of his stuff a lot better than Mario does. You know, Bart Simpson is kind of like the mafia boss type leader on our franchise. The way that we have him look, the appearance that we give him is that basically you always will see Bart for the most part in a suit and tie, with a cigarette in his hand to represent where he is in life. Because basically in our universe, Bart Simpson is rich. A lot of his storylines take place within his mansion, where he does a lot of his business. And, but he also doesn't hesitate to get his own hands dirty too. Let me put that out there. Basically what I'm saying is, he doesn't have to. Bart is so rich and so calculated that he can send his guys out to do his dirty work. I wrote Bart in the same mind as a Nino Brown from New Jack City, or a Tony Soprano from The Sopranos, or Scarface. He's that type of villain, that type of criminal. And he presents the biggest challenge to Mario. He can be thug also when he wants to be. Bart he can do either or, but for the most part, you'll see Bart behind his desk, giving orders to his guys. And when he needs to get his hands dirty, he will. And he's very, like I said, articulate. And a lot of times he has his stuff planned out way ahead of time, or he knows what's going to happen before anybody thinks that he knows. That's how, well thought out he is. And like I said, he's the 1B on our franchise to Mario's 1A. So, a lot of the storylines and a lot of what goes on within the universe revolves around Super Mario and Bart Simpson. And obviously, there's a lot of character development within his character because he's basically our number 2 main character behind Super Mario. And that's pretty much Bart. He's the leader of the crew. He's the mafia boss type, guy. And, what more can I say? That's Bart, all right?
Pocahontas.
Pocahontas. So Pocahontas is basically her role within our universe or our franchise is just like Rapunzel with Super Mario. Pocahontas is Bart Simpson's woman. Yeah, she's his main woman. As a matter of fact, she's pretty much his only woman within the show. Or the main one that you see him with. She ends up becoming the mother of his kids and everything else. She makes her first appearance, I believe, in episode 12, if I'm not mistaken. And from the very beginning, it's basically written that she is, very smitten and head over heels for Bart. She loves her some Bart Simpson. But the difference between, a lot of the other women on the show and Pocahontas is, I kind of wrote Pocahontas as more of the strong-minded one of the women. A lot of the women are weak for a lot of the main guys on the show. Pocahontas is the way I wrote her is she's a lot stronger. However, she's weak for Bart. And that's the difference. And, much like Rapunzel with Super Mario, she's Bart's right-hand woman, and she takes care of his business when he can't take care of it. And, that's pretty much it. She's got an attitude like a lot of the women do. She's very strong-minded, but when it comes to Bart, like I said, she kind of backs down a little bit, but she really loves her man, and they have their ups and downs, but for the most part, she sticks with him, with everything. And that's pretty much Pocahontas. She doesn't get but so much character development, because I'm not going to lie, around the time when I was writing this stuff, I didn't do a whole lot with female characters. Every once in a while I would, but, we were young boys, so we were writing male-driven things. So Pocahontas just kind of fell in the dominoes with the rest of the women. But basically, she is meant to be Bart's woman and Bart's eye candy. And basically his not his second in command, but the one that takes care of the business when he can. And that's pretty much Pocahontas, all right? So moving on.
Luigi.
Now Luigi, all right, probably my favorite character within the universe, or the one I guess like the most because of the style and everything we gave him, is Luigi, the other Mario brother. Now, obviously he's Mario's brother, and so we got it so that the two of them ain't fucking with each other. So obviously, if you ain't fucking with the guy that's the main character, you're gonna side with his main op, which is Bart Simpson. So Luigi's role within our universe and within the franchise is he, like Sonic to Mario, is Bart Simpson's number 2. He's basically the guy that if something was to happen to Bart, Luigi is the next up. He's the next man up. And basically his personality is he's a lot like Mario, hot-tempered, don't give a fuck, but the only difference is he is a lot more ruthless than Mario. Luigi is like the old dog, from Men to Society. Luigi is like the bishop from Juice. Luigi is like the dope boy from Boys in the Hood. He's got that type of mindset, to shoot first, ask questions later. And he's just a hardcore thug ass, gangster that just don't give a fuck. And that's how I wrote Luigi. And he's always been one of my favorites to begin with. So the fact that he's a part of the franchise, and I had to make him badass. He appeared in the first episode right along with Mario. So he's been part of the franchise since the very beginning. And like I said, his role is Bart's number two guy. And he just is very, very no nonsense and very hardcore, straight up gangster. He has a lot of episodes that revolve around him clearly because he's one of the favorites and he's got a lot of character development, especially with his appearance. Like I spoke about in the other episode of Team Mario, we kind of tweaked Luigi's look a little bit throughout the series. Josh came up with the idea to kind of change his look up a little bit because if it was up to me, I would have kept Luigi as looking like he does, just regular Luigi with the green hat and everything. Josh came up with the idea to kind of, the first thing he did was shaved his mustache off, which I didn't agree with at first because I didn't want to touch a character like that, but I rolled with it, and Josh he shaved his mustache. He had him start wearing a green and black do-rag, along with a pair of black overalls with the strap off of it. However, he would keep the green shirt. And that kind of came Luigi's signature look for us. Excuse me. But then, around the time we were writing this franchise, the hairstyle that was cool back at that time, we're talking the early 2000s here, was braids, cornrows. Much like how it's dreadlocks these days. So we decided to give Luigi cornrows. So after a while, you see him with his signature green and black outfit on, whatever it is. And now he's got braids. And that became Luigi's look for us. And the only time he will really revert back to his old look was whenever he returned to the Mushroom Kingdom. And that was pretty much the look and everything we gave him. Excuse me, going through some weather, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, and basically his main role, for the majority of the series is he's Bart's number two. However, like I said, I wrote a lot of episodes strictly revolving around him, his rivalries with certain different characters, and his relationship, which I'll talk about in a different video. And like I said, he's one of my favorite characters. He's one of my favorite characters to write for. And he just got that I don't give a fuck attitude. And sometimes it gets the best of him, but for the most part, he is Bart's most reliable person up until something happens in one of the later seasons, which I'll probably talk about some other time. But yeah, that's Luigi. And with that being said, let's move on to the next character, all right?
Scooby Doo.
All right, Scooby Doo. All right, so Scooby Doo is basically the third member of Team Bart. He's actually the third member of Bart's original 4 team members. Remember, like I said on the Team Mario video, each one of these squads started off with 4 original members. Scooby Doo is the third of Team Bart. Is Bart, Luigi, and now Scooby Doo if you're counting. And basically Scooby's first appearance was in episode 3 along with Bart Simpson. And his main role is basically he's Bart's pretty much watchdog. But he also handles business too. Scooby's also a thug. He's just a dog. You know what I'm saying? So he's very loyal to Bart. He's with Bart from the very beginning all the way up until basically now, because I haven't written anything new in years and years. So, and he's very important to that team and very important to Bart. He's pretty much still Scooby Doo for the most part. He's just gangster with it, He don't hesitate to smoke him a joint here and there, you know what I'm saying? But when it come down to taking care of the business and going at it with the ops, Scooby's one of those ones you can always count on. And he's part of, I say, Bart's big 3, which is basically Bart, Luigi, and Scooby Doo together. That's the big three for Team Bart, in my opinion. And there's pretty much not that much else to say about that. Scooby Doo is Bart's basically watchdog and one of his most loyal henchmen. He doesn't have a lot of character development. I know that I wrote a certain story arc for him at one point in time where he had gotten kidnapped by Mario and Mario wasn't feeding him, so he had lost a lot of weight, because Mario had to pet Simba, the lion that was eating up everything from Scooby. So he had to be saved by some members from Team Bart. So I do remember that. But for the most part, his main role is just he's one of Bart's main guys. And that's pretty much it for Scooby, all right? So let's move on to the next.
Toad.
All right, so Toad. Now then, Toad is basically the fourth member of the original four members of Team Bart. Yeah, so it was Bart Simpson, Luigi, Scooby Doo, and Toad. Those were Bart's original four guys. Now, if you remember on Team Mario, Mutant Toad was a part of that team. That is correct. Mutant Toad is Toad. However, the Toad that's part of this Team Bart right here is Toad in his original form before he became the mutant. And basically, this was before Doug got at him and turned him into Mutant Toad. So the original version of Toad is here, the fourth member of Team Bart. And basically his role on Team Bart, pretty much similar to how we had Bugs Bunny on Team Mario. He's basically the comic relief, punk bitch, decoy, getaway driver, basically. The only difference between Bugs and Toad is the attitude that we gave Toad is basically because he's small. He carries around this fake tough guy persona, he talks a lot of shit because he's small. So he always had this mindset that he's got to prove himself, and so, but he's really not tough at all. And as a matter of fact, one of the main episodes I remember Toad being in is, there's a picture that Josh drew where basically Bart Simpson captured Bugs and has Bugs hanging up on his wall with knives and everything. And also on that picture, you'll see Toad with a sponge and a mop bucket cleaning up the remains of Big Bird who had just been killed and looking pissed off in the face. And that's pretty much what Toad was always subjected to in Team Bart. He was the joke, basically. He does get a little bit of character development. As I say, I wrote a few episodes specifically revolving around him. And obviously his transition from normal Toad to the mutant form obviously had to have a story behind that. So he is a pretty important character. Like I said, he's part of the original four. He didn't last long on Team Bart, obviously, because once he became the mutant, he was gone. And, Bart's team had expanded otherwise anyways. But, yeah, that's pretty much Toad for the most part. So with that being said, let's move on to the next character, all right? Let's get it.
Skeeter Valentine.
All right, so Skeeter Valentine. Now, obviously, much like the last video with his homeboy Doug, you're not going to see no AI concepts of Skeeter here because AI act like they don't recognize who Skeeter from Doug is. But we do, all right? So Skeeter Valentine is basically, if you don't know who he is, he's Doug's best friend on the TV show Doug. And obviously the reason why he's placed on Team Bart is basically to oppose Doug, who's a part of Team Mario. However, he wasn't brought on to the show as a part of any team. As a matter of fact, when we debuted Skeeter, his first episode was basically him coming to town to visit Doug because at the time they were homeboys because we had it so that he didn't know that Doug was gay, because by this time Doug was our resident gay guy on the show. So we brought him onto the show as just a thug that's coming to town to visit his homeboy that he doesn't know is gay. And then obviously he ended up discovering Doug's true colors. And then, there's a few episodes where he just beat the shit out of Doug. And that was basically all I had, written for him, in mind for him. I introduced him, with a crew of his own, as a matter of fact. They weren't like a crew that was going against the main squad. It was just a crew that he hung with on his own, which was himself and Ed Nettie and Courage the Cowardly Dog. As a matter of fact, I wrote a specific episode where Skeeter himself was holding his own against Mario and his crew. It was Skeeter with Ed Nettie behind him and Courage the Cowardly Dog backing him up, standing toe-to-toe with Mario, who I believe had Sonic backing him up, and Phil and Mutant Toad. And that was before Skeeter was a part of any squad. What ended up happening was, after a while, Josh decided to go ahead and just write Skeeter in to join in Team Bart. So there's a specific picture that he drew where Skeeter is actually joining up with Bart, and he's got Ed Nettie and Courage, his boys, congratulating him, but they stay neutral. So that's pretty much Skeeter's, introduction to the show. Now his role on Team Bart is basically a lot similar to Luigi, which is he's basically the next man up. Basically, if something were to happen to Bart and Luigi, Skeeter would be the one. That's what he's entrusted with. And he's basically a lot like Luigi, a not giving a fuck motherfucker, basically. And he's, like I said, entrusted with a lot of the business, a lot like Luigi. So if Luigi's off doing his thing, Bart's off doing his thing, Skeeter got it. And that's pretty much his role. When I wrote the movie, Skeeter along with Luigi was the two entrusted in going to recruit guys to help out with the big battle and everything. And so that's pretty much his role. He's also one of my favorite characters to write for, and he's got some episodes that revolve strictly around him and a lot of character development for him as well. So that's pretty much Skeeter in a nutshell, all right? So let's move on to the next character.
Dexter.
All right, so Dexter. All right, Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. Now, Dexter is basically his role as a part of Team Bart is he's basically responsible for creating all of Bart Simpson's heavy machinery, heavy artillery, his robots, everything in between. His role is basically for him to be Dexter, but he's just a gangster version of Dexter. He's actually the reason why Mandark was inserted into Team Mario to oppose Dexter, because obviously Mandark is Dexter's biggest rival. All right, and we like Dexter because he's, anybody that we liked or thought was cool, we was most likely going to put on Team Bart. That's how we used to do things. So Dexter is written as basically his thug-ass, gangster-ass, dope boy genius. That's his role for Bart is to create his weaponry, his big machinery, his robots. He has some storylines written for him, some character development for him. We ended up putting him in a romantic relationship at first with Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls. Then we transitioned him to leaving Bubbles to start to dating Buttercup from the Powerpuff Girls, and started a whole, drama with that thing. Then we had him beefing with Og from Mike, Lou, and Og, because, Og was kind of being a peeping Tom with the Powerpuff Girls. So, he's got a lot of stuff written for him himself. And, that's pretty much Dexter's role. And I'm trying to think if there's something else. He's pretty much with Bart from the beginning. Well, actually, when we first introduced Dexter, it was in a big haul of new characters that we introduced. Basically, a bunch of Cartoon Network characters moved to the city all at once. Dexter being one of them. And, then they all went off on their own separate ways, and we put them basically where we wanted them to be at as far as the series goes. So with that being said, man, yeah, that's pretty much Dexter, all right? So let's move on.
Marvin Martian.
All right, so Marvin the Martian. Now, Marvin the Martian, basically, his purpose on Team Bart is basically a lot similar to that of Dexter. And as a matter of fact, a lot of his work, he's written a lot of times to be side by side with Dexter, because the reason why he's on Team Bart is basically because of the weaponry that he can create. Obviously he's got access to otherworldly weapons, which will help out Bart basically. Excuse me. So that's basically Marvin Martian's pretty much role within the team. I forget which episode he debuted on, but I do remember the picture that he was drawn on, where he's shaking hands with Bart, and basically he's a thug himself that's just very smart like Dexter, and he's responsible for the intel for Bart, a lot like Spy Guy from Mario's team. He takes care of a lot of the intel while Dexter takes care of the machinery. They work together, but they also hold their own down when they need to. And he's pretty much with Bart from the jump. I didn't write a whole lot of episodes, or I don't think I wrote any at all, revolving around him. He's just one of those pieces in the puzzle, one of those cogs in the machine, basically, of Team Bart. And that's pretty much it for him, all right? So let's move on to the next character.
Tommy Pickles. Chuckie Finster.
Right, Tommy and Chuckie, or Tommy Pickles and Chuckie Finster, formerly of the Rugrats. Now, why am I introducing them together or talking about them as a whole instead of separately? Simply because that's pretty much what they are. They pretty much come as a package. Basically, the way that we wrote Tommy and Chuckie is they're always together, and you'll rarely see one of them without the other, much like they are on their own series, Rugrats. That's the reason why we didn't split them up. And they debuted on episode 24 together, shaking hands with Bart Simpson, joining Team Bart. And basically their role on Team Bart is much like Phil on Team Mario. They're the young, streetwise street thugs of the team. They're actually the reason why we put Phil on Team Mario, to oppose them. I apologize you guys for coughing, but Tommy and Chuckie, their role is basically the rambunctious young guys that do all the dirty work. They do the drive-bys, they do the hits a lot of the times. They make the deals, you know what I'm saying? They do the dirty work and they don't give a fuck. A lot like Luigi, but a younger version of Luigi. You know what I mean? The way we had their appearance is basically there's some young thugs. You see them dressed, swagged out with whatever they got to wear. Tommy, for the most part, with him being bald-headed and everything. In the beginning, we first introduced him wearing do-rags a lot of the time. Baggy clothes which fit with the times back then. We would give him braids at certain points in time, obviously. Chuckie is a little bit different. Obviously we removed the glasses from him and gave him a more modern, thugged out style. Back when we drew the original drawings, he had cornrows. With the AI concepts and everything, you kind of can play around with that a little bit and have him looking even more swagged out. So now, he's got the dreads and everything, Also, I kind of personally put them in romantic, situations, which is something we didn't write originally. But if I was to, redo this thing, is one of those new add-ons, I say. So basically, I put Tommy Pickles in a relationship with Tinkerbell. I don't know, I just did that. And then Chuckie, I put him in a relationship with Storm from X-Men, you know. And for the most part, like I said, their role are they're the young thug, rambunctious ones of Team Bart. They're there from the beginning and they remain with Team Bart up until this day. And that's pretty much their main roles. And they have a couple episodes written about them. And they were like some of the favorites for me and Josh, just because of the style we gave them and everything. And that's pretty much Tommy and Chuckie in a nutshell, alright? So moving on to the next character.
Elmo.
Alright, Elmo. Alright, now Elmo is also one of the favorite characters to write for. He's one of the earliest actually. Elmo first debuted in the franchise in episode 9 in an episode entitled Elmo and Big Bird, which was strictly written about him and his homeboy Big Bird. You know, his personality on the show is he's a dope boy. He's a thug ass, straight gangster dope boy. And Elmo is usually the one that always got that work, alright? And he didn't start off in any particular squad. It was just him and Big Bird basically running Sesame Street. You know, what ended up happening though was, you know, a couple episodes later, Josh kind of wrote Elmo or drew Elmo joining Team Bart. Actually, Elmo is the original. You know, like I said, there's always 4 original members to begin with. Well, Elmo was actually the first additional member of Team Bart past the original 4. You know, Josh drew a picture of Elmo joining forces with Team Bart, which Big Bird was also supposed to be a part of that, but he was killed by Mario before that could happen. So that was another reason to give Elmo motivation to join the ops and join Team Bart. And basically his role in Team Bart is basically he's always the one with that work. And he's used a lot like Tommy and Chuckie, where he takes care of the groundwork, but he can be trusted a little more because he's a little more calculated, other than Buck Wild, like the 2 young ones. But Elmo's probably the scariest because he's the one that you do not want to fuck with. You know what I'm saying? Ask Grover about that. You know, I wrote a special episode where Grover fucked around and found out about Elmo, alright? And I also kind of gave Elmo a love interest personally. If I was to do it now, I didn't write it within the episodes, but I would have put Elmo with somebody like Snow White or something like that, just because it's funny. It's a funny visual. And and that's pretty much Elmo's role. He's one of the ones that remained with Bart from the very beginning. You know, the one thing about Team Bart is a lot of his guys remain loyal with him from the very beginning. Elmo's one of those guys. And that's pretty much his role, alright? So, moving on along to the final member of Team Bart.
Jon Arbuckle.
Alright, now, the final member of Team Bart is Jon Arbuckle from Garfield. Now, how in the hell did Jon Arbuckle end up in this out of all people? That's a good question. It's just one day, because we already had all these teams established, which was crazy to me. One day, Josh just drew a picture of Bart's team, basically the original Team Bart as I wrote it, minus Toad. And in that picture, you got Bart Simpson dead center, flanked by Luigi, flanked by Scooby Doo, flanked by Tommy, flanked by Chuckie, flanked by Elmo. And then right next to Elmo, behind Elmo actually, the last guy is a tall guy with a little afro and an afro pick. And it's John from Garfield. And I'm just like, where did he come from? Why is he there? Josh just decided to add him on as another hand to Team Bart. And I went with it. I didn't mind it. I kind of took that and ran with it. I wrote an episode as to where Big Sonic had an altercation with Jon and grabbed him, and Jon took that afro pick out of his afro, and it was metal, and basically stabbed Sonic with it, and started a little mini beef with Sonic, which was, I thought was funny. So we just kind of kept Jon on as basically one of Bart's main henchmen. I didn't really write a whole lot for him. Mostly how I write Jon is he's always with Elmo. He's like Elmo's boy, basically. You rarely see Elmo without Jon Arbuckle on our series. And he's just another thug, basically written to back up Team Bart to make the team even stronger than what it already is. And that's pretty much the only role I gave him. I like him. He's one of the characters that I like. So we don't do him too bad. Just don't write a lot for him. But he's definitely there, and it's crazy because the first episode he appeared in was episode 14, and he was basically just a store clerk that was getting held up by Mario. And that's the only role we had written for him. So the fact that he was put in Team Bart later on did make sense because he was held up by Mario. So you ain't gonna go join the guy that robbed you, alright? So that's pretty much it, man. That's it for Jon. That's it for Team Bart. I'm sorry if I ramble with these or, I sound long-winded, but I'm always doing these things on the fly because that's how I like to do it live, And so for those of you that appreciate these and enjoy these, I thank you, and I hope you continue to enjoy these because I'm going to move on to the next team, and I'm going to keep going until I get each and every individual character out there, all right? So once again, appreciate you. And like I said, don't ever hesitate to dive into it with D.